All right, welcome to Blue Biographies, episode number 5. I'm here with Emily Tzeng. Hi, Emily.
Hi.
Thank you so much for being here, and thanks so much for joining us. If it's your first time watching live Blue Biographies, this is a project in which we share stories from farmers and dyers and growers of indigo-bearing plants across the globe. So thanks for being here. First, we're going to ask Emily just a few questions about herself and her indigo journey, and then we'll open it up for a little live Q&A session. So if you're watching, feel free to comment, feel free to ask questions, and we'll get to those toward the end of our chat. Emily, it's really, really cool for me to talk to you. I got to visit you last year, and I brought my daughter. A couple people saw a little picture of her with the Finn sheep when I introduced you earlier this week, and she was so smitten meeting your flock. I was just so intrigued by the way that they act, just like little dogs wagging their tail. They would happily come up and lean against us. They wanted pets and scratches. So I had a lot of fun visiting you and seeing your farm and seeing where you work and where you play. So I'm really excited to have you introduce yourself. Just tell us a little bit about you, where you live, what kind of indigo you grow, kind of how you got into that process.
Yeah, thanks for having me. So I live in Puyallup, Washington, which is about an hour-ish south of Seattle. And so we're on about a 12-acre farm that we grow sheep and then vegetables and dye plants. And so for indigo, we grow pretty much only Persicaria tinctoria, and that's, I guess, I've dabbled a little bit in some of the others, but for our production, that's the best in our area, as you know. So, yeah, so that's, I guess, how we started. And I've been growing that since, I'd say, 2013. So yeah, it's been a number of years already.
Yeah, 7 years, or the seventh season, yeah?
Yeah.
And tell us a little bit about how many plants do you grow, would you say?
Um, yeah, so I guess we've grown anywhere from maybe like 100 to maybe about a quarter acre. So, which is a good amount of plants.
Good amount of
Yeah.
plants.
So, and right now, so this year we'll probably do about, let's see, between like about 5,000. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. And you start them, when do you start your plants?
Yeah, so we start around the first. Okay, so I guess I save almost all of my seed, and then every year I buy in seed from one or two sources just to like see how it is. And so I start like one batch of like test germination seed in February just to make sure it's going to germinate, and then we germinate everything the first week of March, and then plant them out between the end of April to now, depending on how the weather is.
Yeah. So are your plants in the ground yet?
Yeah, so I guess we've been selling some extra seedlings, and then like there's another week of pickup, and then I'll just plant the rest of them that don't get homes. So
That's really fun. Have you sold indigo starts before? Or is this the first year you're doing that?
it's first year, and I guess I am. So we've been selling seed for maybe 2 or 3 years now, and we do always get a lot of requests for just plants, and yeah, especially this year, I think people really want to garden, and or maybe they can't attend a workshop, and so this year they can sort of have their own pot of indigo, even if they're in the city. So
Yeah. That will be really exciting to see just all the little different microenvironments from, because I understand even people from Seattle are picking up plants and
yeah,
kind of
so
all over Washington. I know some friends who got some plants from you, so
have fun.
yay.
Yeah. Yeah, I know. I'm surprised. Like some have gone like out to the Olympic Peninsula,
Wow.
like to I guess like Long Beach, so like really far. And I'm curious like how they'll do. So
Yeah, that's very exciting. That makes me really happy
Yeah,
just to know there's all these little plant babies floating all around the
yeah,
Pacific Northwest.
yeah.
That's very exciting. Cool.
Oh.
So tell us, would you tell us just a little bit more about kind of the flow of growing indigo? And I'd love to hear from your perspective as a farmer who grows vegetables and other flowers and does a CSA. How does indigo differ, or how is it the same? And kind of what's the flow of once you get it in the ground, when do you harvest, and what process do you use?
Yeah, so I guess I would say it's changed a lot over the last 7 years, and I would say probably the last 2 years, like, has it been like really has it flowed really well, I think. And that's just many years of trial and error, I guess. And I think it's like so great that everyone can start with so many more resources now.
Yeah.
So say in 2013, I really didn't know what I was doing when it came to processing. So, and made like a lot of mistakes. Um, but yeah, so I guess so I guess our last frost date is usually, let's say, like third week of April, and so that's our really big transplanting period anyway. And so after, oh, I guess I should say, I germinate seeds in an open flat, and then I do pot them up into cells, and it's mostly because we're a little bit tight on greenhouse space.
Okay.
Otherwise, I would just put them in cell trays to begin with. But this way, I could start like all like 6,000 plants within maybe 2 or 3 trays, and then each cell gets 2 or 3 plants, and then I think they do better with more support, I guess, from each plant.
Yeah.
So yeah, and so then we plant them out. Our beds are 3 rows of indigo, about a foot-ish apart, and then I plant at each emitter for a drip tape, and so it's about 8 inches.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then I guess uh, yeah, it's good because I think they, with a little bit tighter spacing, they seem to grow up a little bit more, and so it's easier to
Yes.
harvest. And then for harvest, we usually start maybe around July 4th. And so in between planting and harvest, we weed it a bunch, and then I guess I do a foliar feed with like a fish and kelp about every other week or so, after like the plants really start growing. And then that sort of just fits in with our other foliar feeding schedule.
Mhm.
So that makes it pretty easy. And um, yeah, and so after we like start testing the leaves to make sure there's enough pigment in there, we do a cold water office extraction, which I think is a process a lot of people are getting to be familiar with.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. And so we do that so we used to do like 600 gallons at a time, but I just have found it easier to do more smaller batches.
Mm-hmm.
We have like a 300-gallon livestock tank. And so it sort of works out like if we harvest one full row, or one full bed, which is 100 feet, that like fills it up really well. And so we'll just cut one row every 2 weeks or so. And then after harvesting, we'll do another foliar feed with fish and kelp, but a little bit more nitrogen just to get more of the leafy growth
Mm-hmm.
sooner.
And are
Um,
you hand cutting, or do you use any machinery or?
yeah, I guess now that we've switched to smaller batches, like we mostly just hand cut,
Yeah.
since I find it very enjoyable. But in the past we have mowed it with like a sickle bar mower,
Hmm.
and so it just like cuts it like hay, I guess, versus like chopping it like your lawnmower does. So
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, and so and then in our tanks, if it's a smaller one, we'll just bundle the indigo. If it's a bigger one, then we'll have a net and then just put the leaves in, and then we can lift it up afterwards. Yeah,
That's so smart. I remember you telling me that, and I was like, that's brilliant. So
so
you're putting the net down first, just for anyone who isn't familiar.
right,
And
yeah, so
then the plants go inside, and then you're able to lift that net up, which is probably, I think, the most laborious part of.
it is, yeah, and like letting it drain, so like you get every last bit. So yeah,
Yes. Yes. I'm usually armfuls and then trying to squeeze it to
yes,
get all the last little bits out.
so
So that's very smart. That's very, very smart.
it's my yeah. Yeah, so I was like happy to try that and it worked out pretty well. So
Yeah.
yeah.
And what kind of, is it just like regular plastic netting that you would use around the farm, kind of your.
Yeah, so we've done it with like sort of like deer fencing type
Mhm. Okay.
mesh. Or uh I I guess we used to have a good source of like used like fishing net. And
Mhm.
depending on like the size, it may or may not have worked in the past, but yeah, so try that out this year. Uh, and then one year we did have two tanks and then just like drain it from one to the other. Um,
Okay.
so, which like mostly worked, but yeah, so,
Yeah. Did the leaves want to get caught kind of in the drain?
so
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
so it was like you had to babysit it a lot more.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
With the net, you can just yeah, just wait until like all the liquid goes back into the tank.
And then you just compost yours.
I do, yeah. So we have a lot of composting piles. So at that time of year, so if everything goes to plan, like we've mucked out our winter sheep like manure pack, and then we just layer it with like the spent indigo leaves, and then it seems to like heat it up really well because if we I just like don't have the energy to muck it out as soon as they leave for the pasture. And so it's a little bit, it could use like some like fresh, like green material to like heat the pile up really fast. And so the indigo leaves work really well for that. So
That's wonderful. So it's a really symbiotic relationship. Would you tell us more about the fiber part of your farm and how that connects? And did you already have sheep before starting to grow indigo, or what came first?
yeah, I guess you could say they all came like almost at the same time.
Okay.
Yeah, so I guess I was working on a farm on Bainbridge Island, which is island like just outside Seattle, and like you could like as an apprentice you could like have a row or two, and I it was a vegetable farm, so I like didn't really want to grow more vegetables, and so I decided to grow dye plants, and so I put
Okay.
in a big row of indigo, like way too much for an average person without plants. So and then that same time, there was a different farm that I had done some like animal chores for her, when they're away, and they decided to sell their sheep. And she asked if we wanted to buy her sheep, and I said okay, despite not having a space like already set up for them,
Okay.
which I like, can't believe I did. Like that's seems really irresponsible now, but I guess it all worked out. So
Yeah.
yeah, so our neighbors, maybe just like a mile away, had like 5 acres that we could use for the sheep, and then I had all this dye material. And so uh, after having both those, decided to produce or to like try to sell yarn that's been naturally dyed. And I guess I would say probably like 2013. There, I just don't remember too many people selling a product like that, homegrown, maybe. So
Yeah.
or like yeah, or like trying to uh, like grow enough that beyond their own use, I
Right.
guess. So
Right. That's very exciting. And what kind of spurred you to even want to plant indigo and dye plants?
yeah, so I guess part of it was I've been a knitter for a long time, and so I was like, well, this is at least useful to me.
Mhm.
And I guess I did like that they weren't vegetables, and I also liked that we could like rotate them in with vegetables. As we grew more and more every year, and the yeah, and so yeah, and then suddenly we have a lot of dye plants and a lot of sheep, so um, yeah, so it sort of made sense to I guess at least grow enough of both to be able to share that much. So
And at the time, you mentioned, a lot of people were possibly growing it just for their own use, but there wasn't a lot of commercial indigo being grown here. So Stony Creek, who's in Tennessee, hadn't started their farm cooperative yet. There wasn't really anyone growing indigo commercially at all, right? In the US at
right.
least. And so, how did you even find indigo seeds and learn about the process? A lot of it you said it was trial and error, but was
Yeah.
there anyone who kind of led you to the right
Um,
direction?
yeah. So I guess I would say I think the first seeds I bought were from Fedco,
Mhm.
and yeah, and so they still sell indigo. And then and it's like I think maybe their seed changes every year. I've bought it every few years just to like see what it's like. And I think the first seed it was like the real spiky leaf, um, white flowers. I think
Uh,
so.
the Kojoko, maybe.
Yeah, maybe so.
Hmm.
And probably a few years after that, I bought seed from Elizabeth Merrill, who's in Port Townsend.
Okay, yeah.
And she has a good like website that is like a good introduction.
What is her website called again?
I think it's let's see, Elizabeth. Let me look for it.
Yeah, I've seen her mentioned a couple of times. Is she in this group? I don't know if she is, but
Oh no, she may not do a lot do with the internet.
yeah.
So, yeah, okay, I'll send the link to her website in the
Oh,
chat.
great.
Yeah,
Great, great.
yeah,
I'll make sure and post that for everyone if people are curious. Thanks.
yeah. And
You got
so,
the seeds from Fedco, from Elizabeth.
and then I've bought some from Roland before.
Roland Ricketts, Ricketts
Yeah,
Indigo.
and then so I guess each, and then I just like sort of save, what I feel like are my favorite plants every year.
Yeah.
And then yeah, so um, yeah, but I guess so that's where we are.
And did
And
Elizabeth does she have info on her website about what to do with indigo?
yeah, she has some like maybe like one process you could do,
Okay.
and then yeah, so she actually only grows indigo for seed. Um,
Okay.
so yeah, and she's a shibori artist. So
Okay. Okay.
yeah.
And I know Roland does the composted
Mhm.
method. And did you try the composting or did you go straight
Um,
to the aqueous?
let's see. I guess I might try composting it. So part of it is we just had limited space to dry leaves.
Mhm.
So it just seemed easier to just go straight to the aqueous extraction. Yeah, I would say so. The first year we did like a big batch. It was like in a kiddie pool,
Nice.
and like I let it go way too far, and it was like way too far, like 2 weeks in
Oh,
July.
okay.
I was like,
Oh,
and so like I think um and it was before like there are any I couldn't find any articles in English to
Mm.
read about like how to do it, and so I was like, well, and I was just like looking at pictures, and so I was like, well, this is a thing that I could try. Yeah, and so probably like the first few times it was like over fermented, and then like very difficult to get the leaves out because it was so like slimy.
Mm.
Um,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
and then I probably the first few times added like way too much lime, probably because it was old, and so like it took so long for it to start settling.
Mm.
Um,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, and then like the resulting pigment, like you could like see like those way too much lime in it. So and yeah, so and I still have some like our oldest pigment just to like look back on.
Yeah.
So yeah, but yeah, so
That's
it's
incredible. So you did it all off of pictures, is what you're saying.
yeah, so like in books.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's
Um,
really impressive, actually, Emily.
well, I guess yeah, and then like I started using it, and so for the longest time we would like do like a fresh indigo where you like strip the leaves and then cook them, and then I would just have buckets and buckets of that water before like you added your pH, before you raise the pH and before you
Uh-huh.
aerate. We had like buckets of that water to dye with over the winter, which is like not
Okay.
efficient. And then because like I thought like the resulting pigment that we made was I was like, this is not very good. I purchased pigment just to like see what it looked like.
Sure.
This is like how um new to dyeing I was. Like the first indigo that I dyed with was like our fresh leaf indigo and not like the
Wow.
pigment. So
Okay.
I like didn't even really understand what it was supposed like what I'm like trying to achieve.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Hilarious to me now that I'd try.
I
Um,
love it.
so yeah. But yeah, I guess after a couple of years of like just trying to troubleshoot like the lime, that was the big one, and then like the timing, so
Mhm.
another big one.
Mhm.
Yeah, our pigment is much better now. So
Yeah. Wow. So you really went about it a really intuitive approach. So
yes,
experiential.
yeah,
Yeah.
which yeah, I guess works better for some people than for other. I don't know. Like I was dying with another woman at the time, and I guess she did a lot more research than I did, so which was good. Yeah, but then I remember what year like the fiber shed article about processing
Hmm.
it came out, and that really it made me understand a lot like the science behind the things that happening. So
Yes, that's such an amazing resource, and it's so wonderful that they make it available. I'll make sure and link it again. I know it's linked a couple places in this group, but that article is just such a wonderful free
mhm.
offering from them. They really did so much work and so much research to present both the aqueous method and the composting method as well. Sukumo. I'm still practicing how to say that word. Do you know how to pronounce?
I guess I've always said Sukumo, but
Okay.
yeah. So yeah.
Forgive us if we're not. Sukumo. Sukumo. Um, yeah, I've heard several different versions of it myself, so my brain tries to trick me and practice all three.
Right.
Yeah, I'll make sure and post that fiber shed link again. So that really kind of helped solidify and probably reconfirm some things you were doing, and then helped you fine tune some of the other things that
Yeah.
you wanted to do. Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so that was very helpful. And I guess the other, um, it was the book, I think it's called The Weaver's Garden.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
there's like a section about indigo in there that talks a little bit more about like chemically what's happening. That also was very helpful
Yes.
to like understand, like especially when you're dying, like the different states of change that go through. So
Yeah. I love that your first experience with indigo was your own indigo. I think that's really special, because probably for most people it's the other way around. At least for me,
Right.
it was experiencing something that I had purchased and then going, oh my gosh, can I grow it? And then going, oh, I can. And then, oh, I did. And then, so I
Right.
love that you came at it from the very just like the source, the seed perspective of let's grow it. Let's see what happens. Let's see if we can do this. Oh, we did it. Now what?
Right. So yeah. Well, reactive, I guess. So
Yeah. And
uh,
then did you dye some of your wool? Was that one of the
yeah. So that
things?
yeah, and I guess so. We, in addition to dyeing our, and it has been the case this whole time. In addition to dyeing our own fiber, we also buy in yarn and wool from other Western ranches, and yeah, have those available for yeah. Yeah, so
Will
um,
you tell us a little bit more about your sheep and how we just talked about it,
yeah.
but will you tell everyone about how many sheep you raise now and what kind and what do you do with their wool?
Yeah, so let's see. We have so we raise Finn sheep, which are Northern European short-tail sheep. Really like same family as Icelandics and Shetlands, and so they do really well in our climate because I guess the latitude works really well. And I guess the Finn sheep in particular, they're like notable quality is that they're really prolific. And so I guess this year we had one set of quintuplets.
Wow.
And then a couple years ago we had a set of sextuplets, which
Wow.
was, yeah, I like could not believe they all fit in there.
Yeah, I didn't even know they could have that many.
And I guess the record is 9,
Wow.
which seems like almost too much for, yeah. But I guess in like Scandinavia, because the winter is long, but like in the
Mhm.
summer, everything grows so fast, right? Because there's so much sunlight. They wanted a sheep that they didn't have to overwinter too many ewes, but then
Mm.
they'd have a lot of lambs during the growing season. So
Aha.
yeah, and so I guess our adult flock is maybe about 20, 20 to 30, I guess. And then so this year we had about 50 lambs total, and then yeah, some have left, and yeah, so now yeah, we'll probably have about 40-ish lambs for us this year to grow up.
That's very exciting.
Yeah, and then so we use them for, in addition to for their fiber, we also raise them for meat as well, and so we have most of, and the other thing is they're very colorful, right? So we have black, brown, white, gray sheep, and we separate their fiber colors out and make a couple different shades of yarn. And so that's really fun because, like, if you dye like a dark gray, a light gray, and a white, you automatically get so many shades
Yeah.
using the same plant. Um, and yeah, and so we get most of that milled into yarn at a mill on Whidbey Island. And so it's, I like that it's all Washington grown
Yeah.
and processed.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
So they send it back to you in what format?
so it comes back in skeins.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we dye that. Um, yeah, and so yeah, and that's with our yarn. And then occasionally I'll dye just like wool, and then at the mill they'll mix the different shades together to form like a tweed. So
Ooh. Okay.
but like that's more of a production. So it's like, yeah, just because it has to be, the wool has to be prepared a certain way for the mill's equipment to work, and so no, versus like they can they can mill the yarn to their specifications, and then it's easy for me to dye any
Mhm.
yarn. So
Yeah. Wow, that's a really cool that you have a local mill there to work with. That's so
Yeah,
special.
yeah,
Like,
and it's fun. Is like she's milled our yarn for probably like 4 years now, and so like she's seen it like change, like like you see the same animal right every year in the fleece, and
mm-hmm.
you can just like see the different seasons. So,
Yeah, that's really beautiful. What's the mill called?
so it's abundant earth fiber.
Abundant Earth. Cool.
Yeah,
And so I know you hand spin a little bit as well, right? And you do a little bit of your own for your own projects,
yeah.
yes?
So yeah, my, for fun. So
Yeah.
more
When you
yarn.
have free time, because you have so much of that as a farmer, right?
Right. Well, I guess I look forward to the winter.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, and I guess having like the fiber side of the farm really helps us like with some cash flow over the winter, right? So
Mm.
that's
Yeah.
one reason why it works
Hmm.
for us. So,
Yeah, it's really versatile and it doesn't have a shelf life
right.
the same way vegetables do, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And do you shear your sheep as well, or does someone come in and do the shearing and
Yeah. So we have a shearer who comes
yeah.
in. It's much faster. So
Yeah.
yeah, and
How
then
many pounds or how do they bushel it? I don't know what the terminology for wool is.
yeah. Let's see. So, I guess so. We share twice a year, our
Okay.
adults, and then it's just so like the length of the fiber is a little bit better for the mill at that length. So, it's about 3-ish inches each time, and um, I usually save a year's worth of shearing and then send it. And
Okay.
so, um, I guess let's see. So this past time. I think we have like over, I'd say maybe 125 pounds of yarn that has come back. So
Okay.
yeah,
Wow.
but as it's like double that for like the amount of fiber that goes in. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Okay. And then can you tell us a little bit about what happens next with your CSA? You dye some of it, you
Yeah.
some of it with indigo, obviously.
Right. Yeah. So I guess our yarn CSA, which is sort of a new program for us, just to I guess I was intrigued about that idea and was wondering like how um yeah, because it's like a little bit of surprise, right, each time, which I
Mhm.
like. But so we do 3 shipments a year, and so one shipment is always Orphan fiber, and then the other 2 shipments are other sort of Western, like small batch sorts of yarns, and so the fiber CSA sort of helps us. Like some of the yarns that they get are like in R&D for bigger batches potentially in the future.
Cool.
So yeah, I guess yeah. So that's like a big reason why I really like having the CSA is allows me to I guess not only uh, cover some of the processing for our yarn, but also like I get to buy other farms yarn
Yeah.
that I guess they would normally sell it to like a wool pool,
Right.
and yeah, get to and they some people haven't even like seen yarn made from their own wool before, so
Oh,
it's
wow.
really
Yeah.
fun to be able to do that.
That is really fun. That's such a special, I think, really unique thing. I had never heard of anyone doing it when I saw you talk about your fiber CSA. And will you tell us what are the colors and what's in your
Yeah.
seasonal offering this time?
Okay. Yeah. So we're actually about to send out our like our spring shipment, and so
Okay.
it's so I would say the base is like a medium gray with a lot of brown fin yarn and over dyed with I usually just choose a couple colors to make it easy. So
Mhm.
we'll do indigo and probably marigold. And so and I don't know, might do it together just to see.
Yeah.
So it'll be like a pretty dark blue.
Hmm.
And then the marigold on top of that, like sort of dark brown gray, looks greenish.
Ooh.
Yeah, and then so it's that yarn, and then I we also include like a pattern that's like sort of suitable to the amount of yardage you get, and then
Okay.
um, like another like farm, like another sort of farm good.
Hmm.
Um, so I guess this spring it's actually some wild crafted huckleberry jam from a
Yum.
friend. So yeah, so or in the past we've done like some like knitting related notions, like you know, a friend who makes like stitch markers that are glass. Um,
Cool.
so yeah, always a mix.
Yeah. I love that. I love the combination of not just what you offer as a farm, but really cross pollinating and collaborating with the other sheep farmers and then just other, crafters, whether it's
Yeah,
glassmakers or jam or preserves. So you're getting this extremely comprehensive local experience with a pattern.
yeah,
And I
so,
think that's really, really cool. That's very exciting.
yeah. I guess yeah, seems like and it's fun to see like there are a lot of people who are local who join, but then a lot of people from like surprisingly far away, I guess, and it really feels like a piece of the Northwest that
Yeah.
like travels somewhere.
Can
So
you tell us how far away do you ship? Is it US only or do you ship internationally?
no, we do ship international.
Okay,
Yeah,
cool.
and so I guess right now, like if anyone's international, they can just email and I can figure out the shipping rates.
Okay.
Have not,
Very cool.
yeah, done that in easy way online, but it's easy enough for me to check.
Very cool. That's so exciting. Oh, I love just the uniqueness of that depending on what sheep you have this year, what color wool, and what plants you're growing each year, it's going to be something new for people. So it's an exciting thing for them to join again each year because it's going to be uniquely each
Yeah,
season, right?
yeah. So yeah, and yeah, so it is different all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is also true for like our regular yarn lines. Like the colors do change um, sort of a lot, I guess, year to year, which I like, but maybe frustrating to some people who. So,
Yes, yes. Um, and I love just the kind of looking through your year as someone whose life really revolves around, your farm and your animals, that you have something going on kind of within each season. I think that's really beautiful way to kind of encapsulate and also probably for you, it's a really artistic outlet, something that you get to do for your own personal enjoyment. What's been some I've received a ton of advice from you through this group, which is how we
yeah.
really initially met, but what's some advice that you would give to all the people who now have your indigo plant babies this year?
Oh, well, I think this was the same way when I first started. Was like I delayed harvesting because I wanted like them to grow like the biggest. I don't know, like
Right. Yeah, same.
um, yeah. And so I would say like as soon as you think it's ready to harvest, because it grows so fast,
So
that
fast.
you'll definitely be able to harvest again. And then so that's probably a big thing that took me a while to learn.
Hmm.
And yeah, so harvest early. And probably the other big thing is that it really does love moisture and fertility. So,
Hmm.
and I guess I would say some of the years we've grown more, but like maybe didn't take care of it as well. Probably yielded almost the same amount if we like had a smaller amount of plants, but took really good care of them. And so,
Okay.
I guess, yeah. So I think there's something to be said about that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah, that's great advice. I too was waiting for this ultimate peak moment. I thought it was like a vegetable or a
right.
fruit where you're waiting for this ripeness and then that was the harvest. But this is much more like trying to compare it to other maybe even vegetables or other plants that you would grow on a farm where you're harvesting a lot. Do you have anything else that on the farm that you're more frequently harvesting?
Oh, I guess let's see. Um, in some ways, I think it's like similar to maybe like growing hay, I
Mm.
guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
Okay.
like there's like a pretty good window of time where you can cut it, but like if you cut it earlier, it's better in some ways, right?
You're
So,
gonna get more. Yeah. Hmm.
and so
Right.
I think I don't know. That's probably
Yeah.
one way to
Yeah.
think about it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's a great way to think about it. And picking it just does encourage such a big growth spurt.
yeah,
I've noticed too. Yeah, it's really interesting what you said about um, growing less, but really focusing on it more and yielding the same amount as if you just went all out. I always try to remind myself to grow less and less each year because I'm just one person,
right.
one human. So that's great advice. I'm taking that in myself. Thank you. um, and then we've definitely I think covered a little bit about this, but could you tell us kind of the big why you grow indigo, or even a better question for you since it's been 7 years now, why do you continue to grow indigo?
Um, yeah, I guess probably at first it was like just so mysterious. I didn't know what it looked like before buying the seeds. And like if you've like seen the Fedco catalog, like they don't
Yeah.
have very many pictures. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so it was like also it was like mysterious. Like is this the plant or is this a weed?
Right.
So part of it was that, and then I think like the very first time we died with it, it was like I like couldn't believe it worked. I guess
Mm.
like after following some instructions, and yeah, so I guess part of it was that was the big reason was like just discovering, and I guess these days I still think so many people have not experienced that magic,
Right.
but being able to so usually we host a lot of workshops like provide that experience for people is really fulfilling. So
Yeah.
I guess that's a big reason why we continue to grow like so much indigo is to have people experience it for usually the first time. I don't know, I guess um people seem to really appreciate like being in an environment where there is like such an abundance of indigo, like they don't feel like they're wasting it by
Mm.
learning. So,
Yeah.
you know,
That's wonderful. So you really like to share the experience of, the magic of indigo, and it's wonderful for people to probably experience the full circle cycle, to see you growing the plant, to experience the plant, to see your sheep, to see the wool that then is dyed with your product. So that's a really beautiful full circle experience.
yes, it's very full. So,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, yeah, so I think that's, yeah, I guess like we've shifted from like producing like as much like dye material as possible to like really focusing on the crops that I love, and the crops that I think uh, that people like really want to experience in abundance, I guess. Because in particular, like a lot of people come from the city, and like just being able to stand in a field that is lots of flowers, lots of indigo is something that they really look forward to.
Yeah. I got to stand in that field and it was pretty magical.
Yeah.
With all the plants growing, and to see your sheep in the next field over and your rabbits. And then are you still doing, are you still raising Angora rabbits?
Oh,
or
not right now. So yeah, our last bunny sadly has died. Yeah, but I guess we have a number of other rabbits. Uh,
Mhm.
yeah,
Do you think
but
that you will in the future, or are you going to focus on the sheep?
oh,
Yeah.
I guess depends on life. So I guess
Yeah.
we're about to embark on a large like building project the next 2 years, I guess, and so probably once those settle down, we will have bunnies again. So
Yeah.
but,
I'm glad I got to meet one of your Angora bunnies. That was very special.
yeah,
They're so soft, so
so
incredibly soft. Well, thank you for sharing about that. It's
yeah,
really, I think it's really unique and special what you're doing there, offering both the in-person experiences and then in lieu of not being able to offer some of those in-person experiences this season, possibly, just because things are up in the air.
right,
I think it's really wonderful that people can still experience through the CSA, through the
yeah,
Fiber CSA, and have plants, growing in their yard and learn from you and your experiences that way too.
yeah.
And then you mentioned some of the other dye plants, marigold, that you dye with. Can you tell us about some of the other plants that are in your garden this year?
Yeah. So I guess we probably grow about 12-ish other dye plants, but only about half each year. And then, so for our production, we can grow like for 2 years worth of dyeing
Okay.
in one growing season, and that sort of just streamlines our
Oh, yeah.
yeah processing. And so because most of our dyeing does happen in the winter, everything is dried. And so once we start harvesting, like in July, the dehydrators are just like full of flowers, like until frost. So
Stop. Uh-huh.
yeah, and so I guess I would say like our top few dye plants would be I guess I prefer French marigold myself.
Is
Just
that the Queen Sophia or
yeah,
is that
Queen Sophia, or there are a couple.
okay?
There's a popular mix called like Bonanza, I think,
Okay.
and I just like they're I think faster to harvest, and we just dry everything whole, and
Mm-hmm.
so smaller flowers just dry more thoroughly. I find.
Right. Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, with the bigger like the African marigolds, I always have to break them apart to make sure they dry fully. So,
Yes.
um,
I have
just
some moldy marigolds.
so yeah.
Luckily, they still seem to work, but
Right, yeah, but like could have. I don't know. They seem so dry. Like when you're like, this
yeah.
is fine. So, but
Yeah.
and then the other one that we grow sort of a lot of is the Scabiosa Black Knight, and yeah, so I guess yeah, I really like that for many sorts of dyeing applications, whether if it's like a printing or
Mm-hmm.
we do end up like making a regular sort of dye bath with them. And then that's another good one to make like watercolors with, I think, because you
Yeah.
can change the pH
Mm-hmm.
on it. So um, yeah, and then I guess we also grow a good amount of like sulfur cosmos.
Mm-hmm. The orange ones.
Yeah, so uh, yeah, and then I guess this year we're expanding our perennial section, so a lot of madder and the Murasaki Gromwell, I
Oh
guess.
yes.
Uh,
Okay.
yeah, and so um, yeah, and I guess for madder, I like haven't quite like completely figured out like what's the best way for us to do it because it has to be in the ground for so many years. And
Yeah.
so what I have done in the past is we plant a new row every year, and then like by the third year we just dig up that whole first third
Okay.
row and then replant it.
So you're
So
staggering it. Yeah, that's
yeah,
smart.
um, so we'll see how it goes, I guess. But
Do you have any that you'll harvest this year on the
Oh, I
matter?
have some,
Yeah.
yeah. And then I guess so we moved here about 3 years ago. And
Okay,
so
right.
yeah. And so I've been dying with like some old roots that we grew at our previous farm
Okay.
for a while. So
And the Murasaki, the purple Cromwell root, is this the first year that you're growing that
oh,
here?
yeah. So and I'm curious to see what it looks like when it's
Yeah, me too.
oh
I just
but
have three little plants, but I've heard it's similar to madder in that you want to wait. Is it true that you want to wait a couple years on it?
oh I think so. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's the same compound as alkanite, right? That
Mm,
um and when I used that in the past, we did like an alcohol soak.
right.
Um
That the alcohol extraction
yeah,
versus an aqueous extraction.
yeah. So and worked pretty well, I guess. I didn't have like, any other experiences to compare it to, so
Yeah, that'll be really interesting. I'm excited to hear from you about your experiences with it and vice
yeah,
versa, so we can share,
right,
compare notes on it.
yeah.
Um, yeah, so will you plant and stagger it like you do with the madder?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
And do
So
you also, does it want lime then? Does it want to
I
be
think so.
limed?
Yeah.
Just like the madder? Yeah. hmm
Mhm.
Do you
Um,
lime yours just when they go in, or do you lime them frequently, or just once a year?
so I guess yeah, just when they go in, and then so I would say our soil right now is more on the acidic side because of
Okay.
previous years of what's been growing here, and so I probably lime a little more frequently than most
hmm
people would, but yeah, a couple times a year. And then my experiment for mulching this year is so in a couple nearby creeks, there's going to be like a diving outfit that's removing various aquatic vegetation,
Oh,
and they're looking for a farm to like take it, and I think it'll make good mulch on. Yeah, so I'm gonna mulch with seaweed basically.
oh, wow.
Yeah,
That's really cool.
so we'll see how that goes. Yeah. Um, so
So they're removing a seaweed that's maybe invasive or it's too
um,
prolific.
yeah, I think so. Yeah. Part of it is like where we are, we're surrounded by a lot of more conventional farms. And so I would say uh, there's probably a lot of like nitrogen runoff. And so like there's just an abundance of
Mm.
different vegetation. Yeah. And so like every few years, some divers go and like they said this year they estimate something like 270 tons of,
Wow.
yeah, which is crazy to me. But I guess it's very dense once it shrinks down, so we'll see how much we can take. But yeah, so
That's
I,
incredible.
I know, yeah. And so I guess like a thing that we're sort of working towards is maybe using fertility that we can generate either on farm with the animals or like using sort of like a byproduct of something else local,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
instead of like really buying in a lot of nutrients. So
It's expensive. And so to be able to use a waste product, essentially, something that would, what would they do with it normally if a farm wouldn't take it?
I think they just landfill it. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Wow. That would be, that I'm excited to hear how that goes.
yeah, I'm really curious to see like what it looks like. So
Yeah. When will you get your first shipment, or do they truck
oh,
it?
soon. I think they're gonna be so they're diving like from June through the end of July. I guess
Okay.
every day they anticipate like 10 yards.
Wow.
And so yeah, and they'll like deliver it here every day. So it'll be
Cool.
easy.
Wow. This is very exciting.
Yeah. So yeah, and I guess I would say like all of our neighbors are more conventional. Like I'm the only person who like actively is seeking like more organic waste matter to yeah.
Right. Where they might be wanting to get rid of it. You're like, I would like that,
Right.
please.
So yeah, it's sort of funny to me, but
Yeah. Oh,
um,
that's really, really cool. So you've really embraced a what we now have a term for as the fiber shed model, which is a newer term, but it's a really beautiful concept of really sourcing as much as you can as locally as possible.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah, yeah. You know, trying.
yeah,
You
that's really inspiring. Yeah, thank you. So would you just mention too a little bit about what impact indigo has had on you and kind of your community and in the ways that you've shared? And I already can see there's been a big impact on people having their yarn or their wool spun and being able to see that end product, being able to see it dyed with indigo and other natural dyes. But is there anything else that you would say has been impactful for you
yeah,
in just growing for your community?
yeah. I guess probably like for me, I guess introducing like other farms who are interested, like being able to connect with other farmers who want to grow either natural dyes or maybe specifically just indigo.
Hmm.
And I guess I think we're like working towards the model where that you can see that being um, especially if people have sheep, like the wool being an actually viable product for people to try to work towards getting like a better quality, so
Hmm.
um, yeah, so I guess I think that's a big thing that has happened. Yeah, and so yeah, just being able to share with people who are interested or like think that it could be um, yeah, just another thing they could produce.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I guess I personally feel like like so much of natural dyeing has been around for so long. Like I like no one's really discovering like anything new, right? And so like
Right.
I'm happy to share.
Yeah.
Like if another farm can like take that information and do something impactful for them, that is really special to me.
Yeah, it's a really beautiful way to add value to what people are already maybe doing. I know a lot of people have yarn sheep or wool sheep, if that's the right term.
Right,
And it's mainly, or maybe not mainly, but a lot of times it is just for their own personal enjoyment as a knitter or as a spinner or weaver. And to be able to kind of look at a model that could be impactful for their long-term income, whether it's adding value to what they already offer as a farm,
right,
or expanding what they do, and then connecting, the food and fiber world, which is your world, right? Connecting that piece of farming. A lot of us are really familiar with our farmers now in kind of the either the CSA model or in the farmers market type model.
right,
More and more stores are focusing on bringing in local, produce, or at least letting you know that it's local produce, that that story is really important. And so it's exciting to see that expanded into not just what we eat, but what we wear,
right.
what we make, what we create with. Yeah, that's very really exciting, and I can see already what a big impact that you've made on your community and just sharing, like you said, knowledge that's been around forever, but we're kind of, in a way, rediscovering how it applies to our modern lives, right?
Right.
Yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we've talked about some important resources, but are there any that we've missed yet that have been impactful to you learning about either natural dyes or
Um,
fiber, indigo?
yeah. Let's see. I guess for indigo, well, I guess probably the first like natural dye book that I did like look at is Rebecca Burgess's book, like
Uh-huh.
Harvesting Color. Yes, I think that's really good.
Yeah.
And I guess, well, yeah, and some of it, and part of it was like I always have approached it as a like agricultural product versus like for instead of like maybe the craft side. I don't know. Like,
Hmm.
um, I've sort of mostly interested in dyeing with things that I've grown or like have foraged.
Right.
I'm less interested in dyeing with things that I, purchased from or from far away.
Hmm.
Yeah, and so I think that's why I enjoyed that book so much, is because it does approach it from like the growing or like the harvesting side.
Yeah.
So
Looking at what you have around you already. Yeah. Hmm.
yeah, and so yeah, I guess that's the first book that I looked at regarding dyeing. So um, yeah, and then um, let's see, and then I guess another one that is maybe in some ways somewhat less useful, but there's like the one, it's like dye plants from like native North American plants.
Oh, yeah.
You seen that one?
Hmm.
Yeah, so that's so I guess as you expect, there's a lot of shades of yellow in there, but I guess it
Yeah.
sort of like makes you aware that so many plants that you might think of, like for one purpose could actually provide another purpose as well. So,
Yeah. There's so many food or medicinal crossovers in the dye
mhm.
world. Yeah, for sure.
So
Very cool.
yeah, I guess those are the two that, yeah, I look back at more. So,
Yeah. And would you also be able to share with us maybe just a little story or a little snippet, uh, an indigo experience that has stayed with you, maybe from one of your previous seasons? You have so much to pull
um,
from, so I'm sure you have
yeah.
lots of stories.
So I guess I'll just tell you this, which is like sort of sad, but also like sort of amazing. And like I still couldn't believe it happened. Was so I was doing like a kiddie pool fermentation at a friend's house who had like a renter who I guess was like not completely like in the loop of what was going on. And
Okay.
so it was a mysterious thing that like just appeared in their yard, right? Is like this big pool of indigo and water. And then he wound up dumping it all, actually, which was really sad. And like I still like couldn't believe it. Yeah, so that I was like, wow, this and so it was like, oh, this is probably a good lesson in communication. So
Oh,
yeah.
yes. An
Um,
educational
right.
opportunity.
So yeah. And so that was like one of the very first like big harvests, I guess. And so I was like, oh well,
Yeah.
I guess I'll look at this as a like, really can't be too mad, or like
Hmm.
yeah, working through those emotions.
Yeah. The
Yeah.
experience of letting go, I feel
Yes.
like, is a really actually common theme with indigo, is letting go of expectations
Yes. Yeah. So
and communicating clearly. I
right.
love that you said that because I think of indigo as such a clear communicator. Um, it does exactly, if you're paying attention, it speaks very loudly, you know?
Yes. Yeah.
It tells you exactly the things that it wants, how it wants to be fed, how it wants to be interacted with.
Right.
So, oh man, that is simultaneously, like you said, heartbreaking, but also really important.
Right. Yeah.
I've had a similarly sad experience where my daughter, who is 5, shoveled a bunch of sand into some of my pigment that was straining. Yeah.
Yeah.
One of those communication things again, she's 5, so she doesn't quite understand.
Right.
But also, she did a little bit understand, I think.
Right. So yeah, that was yeah, yeah. Um, and like that experience was actually very indicative of like that whole season of yeah, that farm season was like um very big learning experience for me. So
Mm-hmm. Those are so valuable, sometimes even more valuable than the times where everything just swims along. Yeah. Oh yeah, thank you for sharing that. I think it's really that's one of the things I love about this group is people do share, their what we might consider failures, but really are just really important lessons in
Yes.
getting to know this plant. It's so dynamic. It's different every year. I'm sure you can attest to that.
Yeah.
Always learning about the plant.
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, So, lastly, I did link your Instagram and your website. Are those the two best places, or is there anywhere else we can learn about your plants, your CSA? Are you
Yeah.
selling to Botanical Colors this year too?
Yeah, but I guess so. No indigo. So I guess probably grow rudbeckia and some dahlias for them.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
So
Botanical Colors is in Seattle, Washington, for anyone who isn't familiar, and they have a website. I'll make sure and post it.
yeah.
And is it available now or later in the season?
Probably later in the season.
Later in
Once,
the season.
yeah. And I
Okay.
think I'm never quite sure like when it's like released, and like
Right.
sometimes she like buys it for a certain project and then has extra. So
Okay, okay. So maybe if people just follow them
yeah,
on their Instagram, they'll be able to see updates.
so
Yeah. And
yeah,
then will you tell everyone your website and your Instagram name?
yeah. So on Instagram, it's at Local Color Farm and Fiber, and our website is localcolorfarmandfiber.com. And there is like among the many things, there's like a natural dye tab that like has a lot of picture, like a gallery, I guess. And then there's our shop that's there that you can see our offerings. And then there's a sheep tab as well if you want to learn more about our sheep.
Yes. So you have your CSA. Are there any more spots open or is it closed?
Yeah, I guess I'll probably keep it open until Wednesday, and
Okay.
then yeah, then it's like definitely need to, yeah. Otherwise, then I'll have like a firm deadline of like how many
Yeah.
packages to get out. So
And then is that for the whole year or is that just a spring CSA?
yeah, so I guess right now it's for the whole year, but I guess if you miss this Wednesday's deadline, you can join at like a prorated rate in this for the summer and the fall.
Okay, cool.
So
Cool.
yeah.
And then in your shop, you also have other, like, I don't know what you would call them, but solo skeins or
Yeah,
individual packs.
yeah. So we have just yarn. What else is there? Some other like. Uh, oh, we have a couple die kits that are there. So either like a bandana die kit or
Cool.
a yarn die kit, and that's all the flowers and such from our farm. And what else? Some merch, I guess, tote bags, and then I guess we'll probably have a new batch of hats coming in this summer. So
I'm excited about the hats. I love your hats.
yeah,
You have this little sheep patch with your little local
yeah,
color
so,
on your locally or your naturally dyed. How would you describe that? The front plate or
yeah,
the front piece?
the front fabric. So,
Yeah, I love those. Those are very cool.
yeah.
Well, thank you. Before we open it up for a few questions, let's see. I think probably the easiest way for people to see something made with your pigment would probably be on your shop. I know you have some beautiful pictures up there, unless you have something handy nearby.
Let's see. We don't.
Yeah, I'll
Yeah,
just
the shop is
direct people.
so yeah.
Yeah, you have some beautiful pictures on your Instagram and on your shop, both of the wool and your sheep and your process.
Yeah,
You've shared a lot here with this group. Thank you so much. I've learned a lot from you, Emily.
yeah,
Thanks for being willing to share with me about all the things you've learned over the last 7 years. I think that's a really beautiful like body of work you have now, a
yeah. It's
body
like
of knowledge.
I guess like every year I sort of take the same pictures of the same steps, and like I occasionally go back to see what I thought was, I don't know, like the right moment each time. And yeah, it has changed a lot over the last 7 years. So
Yeah,
yeah, so yeah, it's fun to see like the very first pictures.
it is. It is. Yeah. Well, thank you for always sharing with us and always answering questions and being willing to share here on Blue Bios.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to check in with everyone to see if they have any questions or comments that, oh, Deborah says she's purchased seeds also from, we were talking about Elizabeth Merrill,
Mhm.
and elizabethanonymous.com is her website. I love that. Cool. Yes. So I'll make sure and post that for sure. Okay. I'm just going to update my screen here. Um, yeah. Okay. Great. And so, what I'll do afterwards, and Emily can help me with this, I'll make sure that I edit and add in all of the wonderful resources that you have mentioned, the fiber shed and where you get your seeds, and all of that. Will you be selling seeds this year, or I should
Yeah,
say next season?
yeah. I plan to. I guess this past year we had like I just thought maybe I had some timings wrong. And I wasn't satisfied with our like germination rate, and so I like
Okay,
didn't really want to sell that. So,
sure.
but yeah, I guess upgraded some seed cleaning equipment, so I think it should also be better seed overall. So, uh,
Okay.
yeah, so we'll have
And
that.
when would you offer seeds? Would it be
Uh,
early next
yeah,
winter?
usually I do it in January.
Okay.
Yeah, I guess. So with the yarn, we do a couple like winter like fiber events, and so uh, yeah, I usually try to have seats available for that chunk of time. So yeah.
Wonderful. Very cool. Okay, wait, great. I think those were all the questions. A lot of people said hi and that they love watching your journey.
Oh,
And I love watching your journey too. So if we don't have any more questions popping on right this minute, I just want to say thank you so much for joining me, being willing to do this with me. And
oh
I
yeah.
love hearing your story. I learned so much about you today. Um, and I'm really looking forward, really looking forward to hearing about some of the new things that you're doing this year, especially that sea kelp or the seaweed feedings that you're gonna get from your nearby scuba divers.
Okay.
That's so cool. So definitely keep us updated. I would love for you to share about that here if it
Yeah.
goes well. And even if it doesn't go well, I think that's a really inspiring thing for maybe other people to look at in their region to see
Right.
if that's a viable byproduct for them. I think that's so cool.
Yeah. So
Cool.
yeah. Yeah.
Well,
Thanks for
thank
having
you.
me.
Yeah. Thanks, Emily. We're going to say goodbye and we hope to see you all next Monday. We'll be here again at 10 a.m. And you can find this video and all the other episodes. So this is episode 5. There's 4 other episodes you can watch. They're in the Blue Biographies album, which is a tab right at the top of the group. You can just slide over, you'll see albums, and then you can click on Blue Biographies. All right, goodbye, Big Blue World. Thank you, Emily. All right, we'll talk soon.
So yeah.
Bye.
Bye.